Hello and welcome to DudeCast TV. I'm your host, Norman Dexter, where I'm a dude who's going to talk about some shit. Today's episode, I want to hit on something I've been hinting at for the last few episodes. Adversity and grit. Specifically, chosen adversity and grit. Now, in particular, there is one person of whom I have adored most of my adult life after discovering him. His name is Henry Rollins. For those of you who know him, he got his first big break in his early 20s when he basically won the lottery and got to audition for his favorite punk rock band, Black Flag, and became their lead singer. And that's what kickstarted his career. Now, if you want to know more about Henry, you can very easily look him up. He has several videos explaining where he comes from and the hardness of his childhood and upbringing, and how that hardness and how his complete lack of talent and skill in life thrusted him into a life that I would say is pretty incredible. He wholly sees himself as an untalented, unskilled, useless person, and because of that, he thrusts himself into adversity constantly so that he may continue to grow. He works 7 days a week to this day into his 50s. I think he's approaching 60 now. He works his ass off. But the key is, it's not always for money. And that's kind of what I'm going to get into with this. Now, Henry wrote something called Iron in the Soul many years ago. And to this day, it is sort of an anthem for me. It is one of the single greatest pieces of literature I've ever read in my life for me. And it's a very simple article. I'm going to link it in the description below so you can read it if you want. But I want to read to you the end quote. Because to me, it holds very true. And to many others, I'm sure it does too. But it can be relatable if you change out a few words and a few nouns for something that makes it more for you. But here's the quote. The iron never lies to you. You can walk outside and listen to all kinds of talk. Get told you're a god or a total bastard. The iron will always kick you the real deal. The iron is the greatest reference point, the all-knowing perspective giver. Always there like a beacon in the pitch black. I have found the iron to be my greatest friend. It never freaks out on me, never runs. Friends may come and go, but 200 pounds is always 200 pounds. So, Henry wrote that many, many years ago, maybe even multiple decades ago. It was a very, very long time ago. And to this day, it still holds true for him in his 50s, late 50s, however old he may be. And I agree that I very much feel the same. The idea behind it being the iron is always going to kick you the real deal. When you exercise, when you work out, it's always going to kick you the real deal. 200 pounds is always 200 pounds, whether you're having a good day or a bad day. And so, the analogy that I take from this is that no matter how you're feeling, there's always going to be hardship. There's always going to be struggle, and there's always going to be suffering. It's your choice to figure out how you're going to go about that. And so, for me, and for Henry, we choose to engage in adversity. And that inherently forces us to have something called grit. Now, a lot of times, people will confuse this. And what I mean by that, there's this, Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor who created this philosophy of Stoicism, this idea of don't waste your emotional energy on things that are out of your control. And a lot of people see that as this sort of blank. Somebody who is unfeeling, somebody who is heartless, somebody who's hard, cold, what have you. And I think that's very incorrect. Stoicism, to me, is the idea that work doesn't need to be paid or otherwise monetarily beneficial for it to be inherently fulfilling. And I think that lines up here with this chosen adversity and grit, because The idea that you need to work for money and only for money, I think is very incorrect. It's very wrong. Because you can do things in your day to day, like I've mentioned previously about your routines, and you can incrementally improve them and improve your efficacy in your day to day processes in your day to day life, and you get fulfillment out of that. Now, nobody's paying you to clean your room. Nobody's paying you to do your laundry, do the dishes, clean up after your pets. Nobody's paying you to do that. You can live in squalor if you want to. But the idea is you do all that and you feel good. You get a sense of fulfillment. You get a dopamine hit. You feel good. You feel productive. You feel like you did something worthwhile. And that's a good feeling. So, I mean, a good example of that is this podcast. I do this podcast because it feels good. It's a lot of work. I have to edit these videos. I have to record these videos. I have to write down ideas and then stick to these basic scripts that are out for myself. As you can see, I don't write a lot. I just hit a few bullet points and then I talk. So most of it's stream of consciousness. That way it's almost like a journal entry for me. But again, like how people will write. People will journal their day, journal their thoughts. They'll write stories or poetry. They'll do spoken word. Whatever. It's a way of expressing yourself. This podcast is a way of expressing myself. I'm not making any money off of this. If I do one day, cool. But the whole idea is that's not why I do this. And so, because that's not why I do this, there's a chance that it might do well. Because I'm going to continue doing it, whether it does or not. I've seen consistently over the years, the podcasts that do the best, the TV shows, the YouTube channels, the content creators that do the best are the ones that are authentically themselves, and they're not trying to cater to any one audience. Now, there is one exception. There are YouTube channels, for instance, who try to play the algorithm and make content every single day. Unfortunately, this comes off as annoying. They'll do things like capitalize very specific words in their titles. A good example of this is the Ben Shapiro destroys. We've all seen that. Destroys is in all caps. People will try to focus on ways of hitting that algorithm spike, spiking the views on their content, the likes, and so on. They're so focused on what gives them the monetary outcome that their content starts to suffer. And this is why, starting from the beginning, I've never expected this podcast to make me money. But again, if it does, great. If not, doesn't matter. I'll still continue doing this. I plan on doing this, hopefully for the rest of my life. But we'll see. You never know. Maybe I'll have a kid someday and then I'll have to stop. We'll see what happens. Either way, if there's a hiatus, or if I have to stop for a certain period, or if I stop indefinitely, the reason stays the same. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm doing what feels good for me. You can call it selfish if you want, but just like how some people journal their days, this is what I do, at least for now, week by week. It's what I enjoy. This is my version of Stoicism. I can control when I do these. I can control whether or not my house is clean. I can control whether the dishes lay in the sink or they get cleaned. That's my decision. That's my freedom. And since I'm unmarried and without children, I have a lot of control over my life. And I really enjoy that. And it's interesting because I never really, I go through phases where I'll entertain the ideas of certain people that I admire or look up to. Henry's a good example. I haven't heard something of his in over a year or two, maybe. That quote I read to you earlier of Iron in the Soul. I haven't read that article in years, probably, even though it's one of my favorite pieces of literature. His quote, I hear it here and there in certain videos I listen to on YouTube when I'm getting hyped up for a workout or during my workout, but when I go through a phase where I'm really into what Henry has to say, it's usually when I see him on like the Joe Rogan Experience or some other podcast or Big Think or some other video or media has been released that he's on. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go watch that old stuff I've seen of him before. I'm going to go listen to some of the stuff he said before. I'm going to go and read that article again. And that's mostly what inspired the video today. I didn't really have an idea on what I was going to come out and say this morning. I was stressing a little bit because I do want to do these on a weekly basis every Monday. And it's funny because it just kind of came to me last night. And just like how I do this podcast when I record it, it's a stream of consciousness. And I may or may not have fangirled over Henry's teachings to a couple of friends last night as I was writing up this light script. So I really enjoy it. I really enjoy him. And I think that he is a wonderful person to look at his experiences in life and his retellings of his life and take from that as, I don't know, guidance or inspiration. I find him extremely inspirational. It doesn't mean I worship the guy. It doesn't mean that I think he's some person worth idolizing. I just think he's a cool dude, and I like some of the stuff he's done, and some of it's very applicable to me, and so that's what I'll do. And that's honestly what I hope anybody listening to this does with me. They hear my ideas, they may criticize, or they may disagree, or they may agree or relate to, and then they may be able to apply some of it, at least, in their life. That's the goal. I want to be heard, and hopefully something I say is something that helps. If not, well, sorry for wasting your fucking time. But, I mean, the idea, again, you're choosing something that's difficult. And the more you do it, the less difficult it gets. As I mentioned with my ideas of routine building in my previous podcasts, in my previous episodes, routine building is very difficult in the beginning. This morning I didn't have to. Let me take a step back. This morning I decided I was going to completely revamp a client program. Now, this client, some of you may remember last year, I had a client, I posted some before and afters on my social media of my client Andrew. Now, Andrew and I went to high school together, and he reached out to me recently. He was my upperclassman in high school. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, and we played on the football team together, if I remember correctly. That's how we know each other. He reached out to me last year when he found out his wife was pregnant, and he wanted to get his life in order before the baby came. He wanted to lose weight and become much healthier for the sake of his child and for himself and his wife. And so I gave him a program, and in fact, he was actually the impetus for me developing these online programs, and I had many people come after him because of this. So at that point, it was a demand that I supplied. And so I created something new and brought that into the world. Now, that method worked just fine. He lost, I believe, 40 pounds in 4 months or something like that. He did very well. He was very happy, got to a level of maintenance. His kid was born, things were going well, and he went off to do his own thing. There was no reason for him to pay me anymore. He understood what he needed to do to stay where he had arrived and maintain from there. And he's done well since. Well, he reached out to me again recently. Hey, I'm getting settled, bought a new house, everything's good with the family. I want to take it a step further. I'm like, oh, all right. So it's a bit of a challenge because it's a little more complicated. He's never had abs, but he wants abs. It's going to be a difficult journey, but I know he can do it. He's done it before with just the initial weight loss. And I think he's ready to take a step forward into something a little more difficult. And so I took it upon myself, rather than just give him the same program before and just change up the nutrition and change up the exercise in that same old template and format, I decided, let's do something a little different. I created something completely different from scratch. And I did it on an Excel spreadsheet on Google Sheets so that we can see it in real time. So I can see him track his meals, I can see him track his weight, I can see him make notes on how he's feeling each day, his energy levels, whether or not he's hungry or not, whether he feels super sore and stiff, tired, stuff like that. And I can see his workouts. Is he progressing? Is he getting stronger? Is he getting weaker? Is he stagnating? Is he enjoying the workouts? Those sorts of things. And so I allowed for feedback in real time, but I also gave him much more in detail descriptions on how to eat and how to exercise and how to go about accomplishing his goals. Now, one, this was very difficult to do. It took me several hours this morning. I've been up since 6:45 doing it. It's almost noon right now. It took me a long time to do that, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Technically, I'm getting paid for this. However, I would have gotten paid the exact same amount if I would have done none of this and just made some small changes to his original template. At no point was it required of me to come up with an entire new program for him to accomplish his goals. He probably will and would have accomplished these goals that he has set out for him with the same template as before. But I wanted to give him something different. And here's the key. It's not going to be easy for him either. There's going to be a major learning curve with understanding how to use this new template that I wrote out. And I said that to him. I said, listen, this is new. This is different. And it'll work very well. But the reason it's going to work very well is because you're going to learn how to do this shit yourself. And so rather than give him a template where he kind of has to keep coming back to me, I gave him something that involves tools that once I get him to a point of self-sustenance, he can do this shit on his own. He doesn't need me anymore. Now, I could have just given him something that gets him there, but then he'd have to keep paying me to stay there or come back every so many months or years so that I can help him through a next step after he fell off the wagon. But I don't want that. I want him to be self-sustaining. And I want him to fall into a routine that can adapt with him over time. And so that's why I did it. Now, I am not getting paid anything extra. In fact, I'm losing money because I'm giving him something that will lead him to a point of self-sustenance. However, that's what makes me feel good. That's what makes me feel like I created something of value. Something that aligns with my principles as a trainer and as a person. And I feel like it's a valuable product and a service that I'm offering. And so it feels good to do that. Yes, it was a lot of work, but it felt great to do that. Is it perfect? No, I'm sure he's going to find a typo. He's going to find something that doesn't make sense or doesn't add up, and I'm going to have to change it, and that's fine. I wasn't going to sit there and worry about that. I wanted to get him something tangible that he can use. And that's what I did. And again, it feels good. Does it matter that I made money? Not particularly in this case, but it's an example of how I chose adversity, and through a little bit of grit, I got it done. I also happened to clean my whole living space, make my meals for the day, eat my food, did everything I needed to do. Everything's ready for the day. When I'm done here, I'm going to go to work out, work the rest of the night, come home, cut my front yard, come back inside, get my meals ready for tomorrow, and my day's done. I'll go to bed, and I'll sleep like a baby, because I did everything I needed to today. But here's the key. I didn't need to do most of those things. I wanted to. Because I wanted improvement in my day-to-day routine, in my efficacy each and every day. That's my lived stoicism. That's my routine. And so me revamping his program, that was just a chosen adversity that I picked up and ran with. You know, there are other ones too. So people write books, right? Nobody has to write a book, particularly because the people who write the most books have more money than fucking God, and they don't need to write any more books. But they continue to write them because they have something to say. Just like I continue to make these podcast episodes because I have something to say. Joe Rogan has enough money to retire and be set for life. He can fuel his legacy, his kids' kids, his grandkids' kids. They're good, but he still makes podcasts, still does stand-up comedy, still does UFC fight commentary. Why? Well, because he likes it. He enjoys it. Same reason I do this. You find what you enjoy, and you do it. You find what brings you familiar, and you do it. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You know? I mean, you can replay certain video games over and over and over and over and over again, but it's going to get old. I did that last year. I love going back to old video games from the early 2000s or the late 90s and replaying them because they feel fresh because I haven't played them in a few years. But after a while, it gets old. Particularly if you go through the hardest difficulty and you beat it several times. It gets old. You get tired of it. You want something new. That's where this comes into play. Now, I will say also, this is a bit different for people with children. Children are not chosen adversity. That adversity is thrust upon you. So, this message today, it can apply to parents. However, for the most part, it's going to apply to the people who do not have children. It's going to apply particularly to single individuals who don't really seem to have anything other than their job in their life. And if you don't have a job, if you're stuck living at home with your parents because you can't find a job, or maybe you don't have purpose. Maybe you have no schedule, no routine. Maybe you're up playing video games all night, and then you sleep all day, and you feel depressed and anxious, and you don't know what to do about it. Well, this video is for you. Find small things to do every single day. Make it a routine. Make a schedule. Do something for yourself. Doesn't need to have money involved. You don't need to make a dime for it to feel good and for it to feel fulfillment. For you to feel fulfillment, rather. A good example of this and how it overlaps for somebody who's a parent. I have a cousin who lives next door to my parents now. He has 4 children. He works full-time, and his wife works part-time as a nurse. He has all these projects he's working on. He has a very old car in his garage that he's been working on for a little over a year now, I think. And he just built a chicken coop in his backyard and got chickens. He's still working on it. It's not fully done yet, but he got the chickens, and they're in a little caged-off portion of the yard until the chicken coop is ready. He's also gardening. He's got a few raised beds. He's got a few other things going on. A couple side businesses, but he works for himself. And when you're a father of 4, you don't really have that much time to yourself. But if you have projects that need doing, well, it's a good way for you to get away from the kids and work on them. In fact, you can actually use the kids to help you. And they'll enjoy it. And that's quality time with your family. So it's a really good example of how chosen adversity and grit can actually be a nice way to spend quality time with your loved ones. Who'd have thunk, right? It doesn't have to be you, the adult, sacrificing to go see some stupid kids movie that you have absolutely no intention of even remotely enjoying. And it's the same thing with, your kids having to go with you, the adult, to do something that you want to do, or for them to go and be babysat or at a daycare all day where they're bored out of their mind because you want to go do something fun. There are certain things that can be perceived as work, but with the right attitude and perspective, well, they can actually become really enjoyable, really fun. A good example, I'll use my cousin again. His kids help him with his gardening, and his kids help him maintain certain crops that he has on land that he rents, and they go with him to the farmer's market to sell those foods. And they love it. They have a great time. Another one, if you reverse that perspective, you could be the parent that teaches your kid how to read, and you're reading an interesting story if your kid's old enough. They're 12, 13 years old. You can sit and read with them, and it might be a book that you may find interesting. Yeah, there may be smaller kids that want to read different books that are like, yeah, they're a little under your reading level, of course, but you can still find ones that you both find interesting, even if it's just mildly for you. At least you get 10, 15 minutes of a small little picture book that you're like, oh, that was a nice story. There are very small choices you can make day to day to make your life better. And it doesn't have to promote you in your career. It doesn't have to push you further monetarily for it to be beneficial to you. So I'm trying to include as many people as I can with this message. I'm trying to vomit out. But again, it's just a matter of think a little bit about how you can up the difficulty level in your life so that it can become a little more challenging and a little more fulfilling. It's really all it is. And so okay, like I said, last night I was listening to a bunch of stuff from Henry Rollins. And I was listening to a clip of him talking about how he doesn't really understand relationships. And he gave the example of how a Friday would come and a girl he was seeing would ask, hey, it's Friday, what are we doing? Where are we going to go? And he goes, well, you can sit here and watch me write for 4 hours, but that's what I'm doing. And that's how he is. Now, that's the part where he and I are very different. I have a girlfriend, I'm very happy, and I spend time with her, and we do things. When we're together, my phone's not on me, and I'm spending my time with her. Most often, we're doing not anything. We're just laying around talking, or going to a movie, or sitting around laying on the couch watching a TV show, whatever. But that's meaningful to me, and that's what I do. Every now and then, I'll go over to her house, and I'll spend time with her, and we'll just clean up her house together. Something simple. That's an example of us doing something together where it's this stuff, where something's getting done, work is being done that I'm not inherently paid for, and it's a good time. But it's also okay to sit around and do nothing so you can enjoy yourself. It took me a very long time to not feel guilty for doing that. But then there's the extreme, like I gave a second ago with Henry. He works 7 days a week. But that doesn't mean he's working in a way that's going to make him money. It doesn't mean he's writing so that he can publish something and make money off of whatever he's writing. It's not that he's writing an article. No, he's just writing. Maybe he's writing because he wants to do a spoken word poetry reading. Maybe he wants to write a new lyric for a new song. Maybe he's writing jokes so he can do a new stand-up routine. I don't know, but he's doing something, and he's doing it like a fucking maniac, because he'll put a record on and he'll listen to the song, but before he starts it, he runs up to the support beam in the middle of the room he lives in, and he'll do a bunch of pull-ups, and then he'll listen to a song, and by the time that song is over, he'll do it again. Another song, 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 do it again. He'll do it for hours. Because he's a fucking psychopath. And that's what I find endearing about the man. He's very honest about who he is and what he likes. He understands that he can't maintain a relationship. He understands that he shouldn't be a father and he shouldn't be a husband. And he's fine with that. He still enjoys life. He still has very good friends. Every Sunday, if his phone rings, he's very sad if it's anybody but his childhood friend. And he'll talk to him for hours. Anyone else, he's like, oh, I thought you liked me. Why are you calling? Which, by the way, is hilarious. But he knows who he is. He knows what he likes, needs, and loves in life. And he leans into it. And that's all I'm asking you to do. That's all I ask of myself. Figure out what matters to you, from the small to the big and everything in between. If you like doing things for other people, consider that too, because that adds in also. All right, whether it's your family and your friends, that all matters. I made a joke the other day that, roughly 80-85% of my closest friends are women. And I always make a joke whenever they're having a bad time, because I want to make them smile, I want to make them feel better. So they're having a bad time, they're venting to me, a boyfriend just did something stupid, or they're just having a bad day, or whatever. And I made the joke about, well, if only you could get stuffed like a Thanksgiving turkey. Because we all know that helps. The idea being, if you get some good dick as a woman, get a nice little orgasm, you feel good, you feel great, you feel like, yeah, that was nice. If you're having a bad day, it's a little bit better, because you just got some good sex. And again, that's highly specific, highly ridiculous, but amongst me and my friends, it's something we find hilarious. Because I like to fuck around with my friends. I like to make them feel better. I like to make them laugh. Okay? So when I have a friend who's telling me about how her boyfriend is XYZ and made her day shit or whatever, or she had a bad day at work, I'll make a joke like that. They'll laugh their ass off and say something along the lines of, this is why we are friends. Because that highly specific joke that only 1% of you listeners are probably going to find funny, and the rest of you are going to be like, what the fuck did he just say? It's funny for them. I know my audience. Now, if you're watching this, my current audience, and you thought that was bullshit, well, sorry, not sorry. Maybe that's not for you. But this is my podcast, and I can say whatever the fuck I want. So, if you don't like it, you can just turn it off. That being said, I love my friends. I love myself. I love my life and everybody in it. And I get to choose who's in it. And I get to choose where my life goes. To me, that's Stoicism. To me, that is chosen adversity and grit. To me, that's what makes life fulfilling outside of all your dreams and aspirations. Because say you achieve all your dreams and aspirations, well, then what? This is what? This is the answer. Choose something difficult. Choose adversity. And persevere with grit. That's it. Up that difficulty of your real life video game just a little bit every day, and your life will be better, more fulfilling, and you'll find purpose. In the smallest places. And it's a really good time. Nobody wants to play their video games on easy mode. Everybody wants to do it on hard mode. And then once you do the hard mode and you unlock impossible, everyone wants to do that. So work your way up the difficulty ladder. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. YOLO. You only live once, right? Do what you can with what you have. And live your best life. But that's all I got today. Thank you for listening. Some of this was probably hot garbage, but I appreciate you making it this far. Again, Henry Rollins' Iron in the Soul, the article, it's going to be linked in the description below, because again, this is one of my favorite pieces of literature ever written. I love this article, and I feel that this is something that, especially for young men and young boys, should be provided to them as reading material, because I find it extraordinarily helpful and inspiring. But again, I have been Norman. This has been the DudeCast, and thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Peace out, bitches.
It's time to put our times behind, get all the bad things off your mind. He's feeling good, she's feeling good, we're feeling good, yeah. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. There's nothing better than your friends, there's no problem, you can't win. Someone that's always got your back, not caring about this or that. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey. It's all about meeting new faces, the smiles on your face and you can't erase it. Partying on, it's going on, partying on till the break of dawn. Oh, it's time to put hard times behind, get all the bad things off your mind. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes, hey.